I'm fucking sick and tired of Hollywood. It's a rotten part of our world that is a complete fucking waste of space. It has no positive impact on our society. They can't stop producing the same crap that we've seen a million times already. They can't come up with anything original or fucking creative. I don't want to see any more superhero movies. I'm done with the Fast and Furious and the 12th movie coming out in the franchise. Oh, here's another Lord of the Rings thing. Oh, here's a show about that video game you like. Here's some Batman, and don't forget about Joker. The only thing emptier than Hollywood's creativity is my message box. And believe me, there is absolutely nothing in my message box. The only thing in there is me reaching out to people, only to be left on red for 2 days, and then I get a half-assed response. Even that is more enjoyable than taking part in another Hollywood production. Eating a sock that has athlete's foot and then was used as a condom for a dog with rabies would be better than something that Hollywood makes. Hell, eating that sock would be a better story than anything Hollywood has made this entire century. Oh, what's another analogy? Hollywood is so bad that they are not good. Hollywood is worse than bad. You know what else is worse than bad? Not a lot of things. People are getting so sick of Hollywood movies that whenever they see one, they get old and die. Aside from all the jokes, Hollywood is terrible, a disgusting part of our culture. From bankrupt creativity and vapid creations to a corrupt industry that breeds toxicity, everyone in the film community can agree that it serves no relative positive purpose, and our view is that it needs to be torn down and replaced. Why continue to have these terrible projects be produced when we can invest in better artists? Hundreds of millions of dollars are wasted on projects that don't really serve a purpose to the film community nor the rest of society. We hold the view that Hollywood makes films for a profit. All these major production companies operate as a capitalist business first and foremost. They do not view films presented to them as art pieces, but rather as investments that they could grow their capital with. Every decision before, during, and after a Hollywood production is made in service to create a profit for the company's shareholders. Their films aren't creative for this very reason. Why take risks? Why damage the potential to continue making a profit off your content? Why would you make a new film with new ideas when you already have an audience that likes the property you made before? They see no need to innovate because innovation could damage their short-term profits, and the big production companies don't want this. They prefer to make the same picture over and over again, maintaining a steady growth and profit year by year. And they're right in their incentives. Why damage your business model? Why harm the chance of not making an extra few $1 billion for your company? These are the contradictions of capitalist society. Capitalism needs innovation to grow, but simultaneously cannot have innovation because it has the potential to severely damage their business model. Hollywood's hold over the film industry is tight. There are few competitors that match their productive output and revenue. Sure, there are slightly different industries like YouTube and sports shows that take away from some of their viewing, but in the realm of major film circles, there are none. Each major studio has made their business model fairly similar to each other, built off of already successful franchises with sequels and spin-off TV shows. The franchise model was made efficient by Disney, no doubt. The Marvel franchise set the bar at its height for these companies when it comes to making a stable, growing profit. They made films that already had a fan base, which were Marvel and comic book fans. They made movies on the more popular heroes and really just adapted an already written comic book series onto the screen. There was minimal innovation when it came to creating the story itself. Another positive for the production studios was that the audience was already built in for them. They were already familiar with the story before the movie was even created. The low-budget, high-profit model has arguably been perfected by Blumhouse Films, as they make cheap horror films for a few million or even less and typically turn out a 10x project. They make a lot of stuff that doesn't hit, but it's so low budget there's effectively no risk to the company. A lot of the film's success rides on how it's being marketed, and they typically sell their films to teenagers and young adults. They'll make really bad PG-13 films, but they're great to take a date on or go out with your friends to make fun of it or whatever the hell. Finding your audience and convincing them your film is worth watching is absolutely key to determining if your film will make a profit or not. Why do you think all the film people giving us advice say that you need to know your audience? It's crucial to know your audience, but also the size of your audience relative to the cost of your production, so that the production studios can determine how much of a profit they can make off your film. This also goes in hand with the studios doing a lot of assuming of what people want to see. People keep going out and seeing the popular crap they are given, so the popular crap continues to sell. For those of us in the community, we know that we are given is not of high quality. It's all crap from the studios. They do not make anything inspiring, nor do they care about creating art. They do not care about doing the right thing. They don't care about women's rights, racism, trans rights, workers' rights, none of it. If they portray it in their story, it's merely as a tool for the audience to buy the product. Hollywood wears a mask to continue its profit train. The studios have found their formula with the MCU. They found a way to brand their product and sell it to those who are more willing to buy it. There was a low supply of superhero films. The studios saw this, along with the fact that there could potentially be a high demand for a mass superhero franchise. This is where some of the other studios have failed. Franchises like the Ghostbusters and DC Universe have really failed to be successful in making a profit. But so many other franchises have been successful in doing so, not on the same level as Marvel, but enough to be profitable. Star Wars, Fast and Furious, Indiana Jones, Harry Potter, James Bond, Pirates of the Caribbean, Transformers, Despicable Me, Planet of the Apes, X-Men. All these franchises were made for one key reason, and that's to make a profit for the company's shareholders. They're investments for the company to continue to put money into as long as they continue to get money from them. Oh wait, I did forget something. The other key reason that films like these are produced is to try and control the culture of today. The studios have an insane influence on American society due to the sheer size of the industry. They tell people what to feel, how to feel about something, why they should feel that way, and when they can do something about how they feel. This is control, and films do heavily impact people's emotions and perspectives of the society that they live within. We see this with the news industry as well, as the two main stations, CNN and Fox, both compete for watch time. They both placate to their viewers by digging into their perspectives and feeding them the crap that they want to hear. Those audiences don't ever get challenged meaningfully by an opposing perspective that may have a solution to a certain problem. And these two stations control how people should feel about genuine political problems, and they do so by how they frame questions. There's always more than a certain set of questions to be asked. They never ask a collection of questions that challenge why things are genuinely happening as a system. They focus on particular cases of problems and don't explore how these cases attach to a larger issue. Whenever they do try and make the attachment, it's inaccurate. They of course never have serious answers either, as they don't even understand the problem itself. How can you change the oil in your car if you don't know where it is located? These are the faults of the capitalist class, and tying it back into the film industry, they cannot make films that serve a meaningful political purpose. Hollywood is full of liberals now, but it used to be the home of several traditional conservatives. Both perspectives, when they were in power, played a tremendous influence on the audience and how they viewed social issues. Back in the day, they held women to a viewpoint of a housemaid, staying in the kitchen and taking care of the children, almost never having a job, and even if they did have a job, it was a small job that they were typically belittled for having. The husband made all the money and made all the decisions in the household. The woman could never challenge him and was often hit for having an attitude or being upset. This reflected the real-life perspective of what a traditional household was, but it also played into the fact that it was okay and normal, when in reality, it isn't. Beating your wife for being upset with your alcoholism or being out late or working too much isn't the solution for the problem. And making fun of your wife for trying to make some money and keep herself busy while you work isn't being a caring partner. This perspective couldn't change until the 60s and 70s due to real life changing around Hollywood. Hollywood was never ahead of its time when it came to social issues. It was always 1 or 2 steps behind the social developments that were going on. Once women began to be more empowered in society in the 60s and 70s, the film started to reflect this change and conflict for American society. There was an economic boom, and they were able to work more jobs and began to play a bigger part in U.S. society after the war. The 60s and 70s reflected this social conflict. Hollywood was at an impasse as they just went bankrupt in '63 and were forced to give artists more leeway creatively because they could no longer make typical studio projects. They began to turn to the smaller and more independent filmmakers for their artistic input in the world. Hollywood couldn't control the production as much as they could in the golden era. They were able to keep afloat in this time period, but they needed another business model to turn to for them to regain their profits and continue to grow. That's where they found the business model of franchising. Star Wars and Rocky were 2 of the many pieces that pushed this model forward. There was also the blockbuster period with Spielberg and James Cameron that allowed for solo pictures to be incredibly profitable by being easily marketable to a wide and diverse audience. Hollywood found their stride and their boom began once again. Down to the wayside fell the independent projects that were more innovative for something that was more accessible, easier to sell, and made more money for the fat cats. To fast forward back to today, Hollywood is slowly running out of things to produce. With franchises stretched out more than 10 movies, spin-off shows, remakes of old trilogies, to then also be stretched until they are no longer profitable. They are pushing the limit with this business model, and soon things will crash back down to earth for them. No one is really interested in superhero movies anymore, along with all the other crap Hollywood produces. Their more serious projects meant to win Oscars often fail to serve a meaningful purpose to the rest of the world. This is because Hollywood isn't connected with the rest of the world. It's so embarrassing how detached they are from the real world problems. They will almost never touch a severe problem like war, police brutality, climate change in any meaningful manner. Most of their productions surround cultural issues like feminism, homosexuality, and racism. Yet even when they do this on a smaller production scale, they still fail to really explore all the issues of what it's like being a woman, being black, gay, or transgender. They're too busy merely focusing on the fact that it's a film about the given minority, so they celebrate the fact that these people are being shown. The question I have is, why should we celebrate a film that is showing normal people? We should not be celebrating the fact that demographics considered to be the minority of a population are shown on screen. They have their unique issues, certainly, but to explore them on a separated and smaller scale often fails to reach the rest of the population in a meaningful manner. Not to mention that Hollywood idiotically insists that because they made a movie about the struggles of a black family, that the film is good merely for that fact. A film should never be good or bad determined on its content, but rather how it is shown primarily. Then we must dig into the content of the artwork in order to dissect if the meaning of the film is being put forward efficiently. But Hollywood promotes their content, not their technique. Even so, we can go into this conversation of how to properly explore your story in its content, disregarding technique briefly. Take the serious issue of racism, for example. Let's say we want to produce a theatrical film about the killing of George Floyd and the consequences that followed after this event. Are we to only focus on black people that live within the United States? How did the killing affect white people? Did they see it as justified? Were they appalled? Did they join the uprising and protests and riots? What about the police officers? Were they guilty? Did they feel justified? Were they confused? And what about the politicians? Were they worried for their jobs? Did they defend the policemen? Did they escalate the situation? Did they solve the problem? How did the workers respond? Did they join the protests? Go on strike? Did they revolt? You cannot make a film about racism and only show how it affects one group of people. This is the problem you run into when you make a film about one section of the population, is you have to relate that demographic back to everyone else into society. The parts always have to be related back to the whole, and in doing so, also have to be related back to one another. Racism impacts all of us in our daily lives. It affects our perspectives of each other, how we treat each other and communicate with one another. It's a very complex social issue that cannot be fully explored by just looking at the victims of the issue, but rather the whole of society must be explored. Within this exploration, we will find answers about the society and how the people live within it. These answers must be pronounced and properly expanded upon within the film. Only then can you begin to consider celebrating the fact that you made a picture about racism. Racism has history, different demographics, causes and effects for every single group of people. It's a part of the social conflict within capitalism, and it's a problem that cannot be solved within capitalist society. Of course, most capitalists do not know this and frankly don't really care. Especially the capitalists in Hollywood. They expect to be rewarded just for the fact of making a movie about a black man, instead of how the film was technically put together and the genuine story behind what was going on. Filmmaking is an art, and with art, you have to explore the story you are creating. You cannot just slap together a few events here and there and then call yourself a good artist. You must really explore the topic of concern, especially if it's about politics. This is the role of the artist, to create something that is meant to depict the real world and display it back onto itself. The more the artist is able to understand reality and the material composition of society, the more they are able to depict an accurate depiction of life. This is only half the battle. The artist still has to be able to communicate their vision to make sense to the audience logically and emotionally. But back on the question of making a political film, I personally think that theatrical filmmaking is very limited when it comes to tackling large political issues. Most of the time, you need large production budgets, with tons of actors, sets, and locations, crew members, and all that shit. That would put you at least in the realm of tens of millions. Theater limits you to telling a character-based story, so you're more driven to try to tell a massive problem on a smaller scale due to your character limit. It limits your creative story greatly as to what you can show and who you can explore. The more you explore, the more your production budget goes up, which increases your incentive to be financed from large businesses that, number one, can afford the investment, number two, know that your film can make a profit, and then number three, agree with your political perspective. Theater gives the filmmaker a lot of limitations creatively, as they have to fit the theatrical formula. But back to the conversation of Hollywood. They fail to really understand social issues. They fail to go back to the root of the problem. Racism is because of rich white people. Climate change is because there's not enough regulations. War is because of human nature. School shootings are because of guns. Inequality is because of greed. The list goes on, of course, but they often can't see in front of their own 2 feet. Hollywood productions that display social problems are often half-assed. Like I stated before, they never fully explore them in the depth and care that is needed. They do not explore real-life problems outside of identity politics either. Their films are meant to be escapist, to bring the audience to a place that they can never be. It's not meant to inspire the audience, but to distract them from their internal and external problems in their life. Everything they produce is to preserve the status quo of capitalist rule, and never to rock the boat or present question to the rule. Not to mention the internal toxicity that plagues Hollywood culture, the reward being endless fame, glory, money, and sex for those who step over and stab others in the back to get to the top. They are rewarded for their psychotic behavior as long as it's kept a secret. Normal people see all the stories of rape, sexual assault, child abuse, molestation, drug abuse, extortion, etc., etc. People understand that this is the peak of human degeneracy. Hollywood is a part of society that is decaying from the inside. Their focus isn't on improving yourself as a person and how you can improve society, but rather how you can further your position in the world and be viewed in a better light. The reason for this video and why I'm coming after Hollywood in this manner is because I do not agree with their values and their use of film. We don't stand with Hollywood, but rather actively against it. The industry should be controlled by those who make the films, not by those who see them as investments. Investors and executives shouldn't control what people want to create, but they do. They control the whole productive system of filmmaking. If you can't fund your project, then your project doesn't exist. Most people can't make 6 figures in a year, let alone save that much to try and make their project. Most independent filmmakers are subjected to very small budgets of a few $1,000s to try to make their artistic statement. They make their films on their days off, if they have any, and then they grind for months or years at a time on each project until they are lucky enough to have their project entered into a film festival. Then it's another matter of luck for them to meet a producer, executive, or agent who wants to buy or help them sell the project. We can go on and on about the difficulties of distributing your film as an independent filmmaker, but the point is made that the Hollywood filmmakers don't worry about this on the same scale we do. Their whole distribution system is guaranteed because they have a monopoly on all the theater companies, on top of the fact that they own the streaming platforms. They don't worry about where their shitty project is going. They know exactly where it will go and if it will sell or not. Hollywood has too much money to spend, and their massive productions display this perfectly. One Hollywood lens can be the equivalent of 5 to 10 indie films. Hollywood's monopoly on film affects us all, and it by no means is a positive impact on us. We want to combat Hollywood, and this is something that definitely needs to be built up to. The industry has definitely shaken a bit with the writer's strike, along with the streaming changing the whole game of how films are distributed. We must draw a line in the sand along the basis of your class identity. We are the workers that create the films. The capitalists are the one who gain the profit from our production. In a political sense, it should be part of our goal for that profit to directly belong to us, until profit is something of the past. It is also key that we have control over the funding of our project, along with the distribution of where the said project is going. This is something that will be covered in a series of videos down the line. This channel is meant to promote my own filmmaking adventures that I want to go on, along with the film theory I am actively trying to build. I have films that I want to make about politics, music, history, and so on. I know that my projects won't be funded by Hollywood, and they will most likely need some kind of independent funding, whether that be you guys or a capitalist that is interested in innovating artwork. It's my goal to demonstrate all my views on the film industry, along with communicating what my theory on films are. My communication skills through video are still pretty rusty, but I encourage you all to give me your opinion on the video, whether or not I was confusing, thorough, or too surface level on some issues. I trust there will be ones that are concerned with this process, and there will be others who just want to troll or complain. I'm actively building a film theory that is separate from theater and literature. It relies on the scientific components of film, starting with the image and the edit. It's my goal that the audience here will grow to fully understand this theory and know what my personal goals with filmmaking are. In a short period of time, I will explore this theory in depth, and will highly encourage you all to discuss it with me and everyone else in the community. It's with this channel that I hope to build a community that is concerned with building this theory and moving towards creating films that do not need theater or literature. Films that will change filmmaking forever. Once we make these films and build up a great audience, then we can move more in a direction of combating Hollywood and creating a revolutionary film industry that is controlled by the workers and filmmakers themselves.